still, things aren't looking great because, you see as this administration goes on, they are further purging the federal government of any expertise and also any challenge to their ideologues, So several different stories this week on that account. First of all, this from the AP. So the Trump administration is attempting to fire Lisa Cook, a governor with the Federal Reserve. And look, go figure that Trump is trying to fire the one black woman, the first black woman to ever serve in this position. Now, Trump is attempting to fire her over allegations she committed mortgage fraud when she purchased a home in 2021. This is kind of showing that the walls that are supposed to exist between certain government agencies have been broken down. They're using like private bank data from other things to drum up charges against this woman. So that's scary stuff. But she's not the only one to come under scrutiny this week. So the CDC director, Dr. Susan Monarez, who's only been there since July, has been removed from her position already, and several high-level veteran agency officials resigned after word spread about her departure. So now, mind you, this is somebody that was appointed during the Trump administration, a month ago? And they're already like, oh, wait, I'm sorry, you might have too much integrity. You recall last month there was a gunman fired at the CDC, several hundred rounds from a pharmacy across the street, killed a police officer and shot out hundreds of windows. This her ouster, which was first reported by the Post, burst into public view over several tumultuous hours on Wednesday. This I'm quoting from an article on CNN now. Just weeks into her tenure as director, she has clashed with HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy over vaccine policy and her refusal to fire several veteran CDC leaders, according to people familiar with the situation. So, I want to open this up to you, Michael. I'm going to come back to you here. Couple thoughts on first the reserve governor, Lisa Cook, and then the CDC director, both being targeted this week. The CDC director out, the board governor challenging her ouster through the courts.
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is it's humorous that Trump is getting on somebody about fraud.
Right?
But I mean, it's so typical. It's
fraud. You call that fraud?
They're always pointing out the things they're doing wrong. So again, there's not a whole lot to say on it because it's just a constant theme, through the show, through the whole administration. So that's my takeaway is Trump's getting on somebody about mortgage fraud. Sure, he's never had that problem. And, and then I find it interesting somebody leaving that came into the Trump administration because she had to know what she was getting into. These guys are in place, so bravo, I guess. You thought you were going to infiltrate that organization with Trump and Kennedy, so I don't even know what to feel about that.
Would be your only hope, right? Is that they keep putting new people in place who it turns out actually have some integrity, and they just have to keep firing them one by one.
So they get in, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were this crazy. I just thought you were a little crazy.
I thought it was an act."
Well, so her ouster comes days following days of internal pressure from RFK Jr.'s people, basically. So Kennedy summoned Monarez to Washington and demanded that she fire Deborah Howery, the agency's chief medical officer and deputy director of programs and science, as well as the director for National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases and the director of National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. So all the experts, like, I need you to go in there and fire all the experts. And she's like, no, I can't do that. Like, I've got more integrity than that. So Kennedy suggested in a Tuesday meeting of President Trump's cabinet, which we didn't even talk about this week, but did you guys see that cabinet meeting? Just like 3 hours of like North Korean level sycophancy from his entire cabinet. Like just all around the table. Like, yes, sir, I've never seen someone handsome, sir. No, sir, this is the best leadership ever. No, sir, yours is the grandest penis I've ever seen. 3 hours of this garbage. But during that cabinet meeting, Kennedy said that HHS would reveal research in September that showed certain interventions now are clearly, almost certainly causing autism. He's still on this thing, even though it's been clearly debunked. Robert F. Kennedy, correct me, Ethan. Would I be wrong to say that he is essentially a eugenicist?
So I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's unfair. And especially if you're not using it, because I mean, terms get used pejoratively when they can be used in a really specific and tight sense. When like the line between herd immunity and eugenics and like eugenics is so thin that it should disturb anybody that uses the terms. I mean, obviously you want broad immunity to chickenpox, you want broad immunity to polio, and vaccines are a really, really good way to do that. In fact, they're so much better way to do that we don't have polio anymore, or we used to not have polio anymore. And the desire to have someone powerful and reassuring tell you that the thing that you are anxious about has a really simple solution that's very comforting to you is very powerful. It's very powerful. And vaccines are complicated. Vaccines are mandated by the state. Boo. And vaccines are and because there's lots and lots and lots of great content on this. I understand. I am very good friends with smart people, educated people in the healthcare system that are vaccine skeptics, that are worried about vaccines. And you have to be able to have really open, like respectful conversations about it and be like, you can look at little micro examples. And the thing that I saw that really helped persuade me on this issue is that it's like, there is few things that have been as well studied as vaccines at this point. There are few things that have been studied longer than vaccines at this point. And vaccines are safe. They are safe like seatbelts are safe. They are safe like locks on your doors are safe. Things can go wrong and do go wrong. And not only that, do you know why we know that? It's because they keep a record of how they go wrong. The same people that you're saying are trying to cover it up or trying to like push vaccines on you. You know where you're going to find the records of harm from vaccines? The same organization, because they care about it. They know that it doesn't always work, that there are adverse reactions. But across the board, it is safe like a seatbelt is safe. People get stuck in their cars when they get in a car crash sometimes because of their seatbelt and they can't escape and they die. That has happened. And I can show you horrifying, terrifying examples of people getting stuck in their car because of the seatbelt. You should buckle your seatbelt. You really, really should. It's really much, much safer and saves lives when you do.
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy. And but you point this out. I was fighting with my dad last weekend. We have our weekly call, and he's a Republican, and so we occasionally tussle. And one of the things I went at him about was like, Republicans govern by anecdote. They scientific evidence be damned. If you know a guy, then that's the story that's going to stick. right? And it's always like, oh, I know a guy, or I
Yeah.
went to school with a guy,
Yeah.
or my best friend's second cousin's former roommate, like, went to school with a guy. It's like,
Yep. Yep.
and there's no getting through to those people. But generally, I think, and Renee would correct me if I'm wrong, I think this administration is just generally hostile to the scientific method, because it involves inquiry, it involves asking questions. It is antithetical to this very authoritarian framework that we were discussing. There's just what the leader says. There is not,
Mhm.
okay, well, let's study that and let's study it again and let's ask questions and let's refine it. Just like last week on the podcast, I was talking to the professor here at IU from the AAUP and talking about the attack on higher education at large. Like, well, university, higher education is basically just like the scientific method applied to all of the things, right? They want
knowledge.
they want the scientific method out of government entirely, and they just want hierarchy and what the leader says.
Yeah, they've been prepping us for that whole conversation since. I mean, I say us. I'm an only child, and I was raised in church, but everything you just said is everything I heard every single time I was in the doors, right? And they say, "Oh, separation of church and state." No, they don't. They want church. They want the state to be the church, right? They do. And if you take scientific method out of the equation, they're terrified of questions. They're terrified of questions because if you ask questions, and number one, they're afraid they won't have an answer, right? People are expected, if somebody asks a question, to have an answer. And then if you ask questions, you're going to get to a truth, or at least to a point where you don't have an answer. And, you're told in church not to question the pastor. You never question the word of God. You never question and so they set up the administration and our whatever to look like the person who hears from God. And it's like, well, turns out if that's your argument, when and you pulling from that again is we all can hear from God. And what is God? And that's a whole other question. However, like it's all of the. Are we really this dense? We're not. People are smarter than all of these things. And I talked to you, Scott, when you had recently gotten off the phone with that conversation last week. And
oh yeah,
in my own family who may or may not be watching this, and whatever they are.
My Renee's family.
Opposite, right? Okay, but not the ones I've raised. So you're welcome. But it's you all, if they didn't know what the delivery of the information was coming from, and it didn't have the label of Democrat or liberal or whatever, and they just read the information, whatever it is, they're smart enough to choose and do the right thing. And that's why I get so frustrated and angry is you're smarter than this, and yet you're listening to an administration or people who are trying to tell you you're dumb. And at any point when you're smart and have a thought on your own, oh, then you're supposed to question it. And oh, maybe they know something that I don't know, or my friend got sick because they had whatever it was. And you're right, Scott, you're right, because they think that if I'll just stop. I'm speaking to the choir. I'm preaching to the choir. Like you all know. And we can all be better than that. And we have to be.
Yeah. But it helps to talk it out. It helps to go through this. It helps to talk about people we know and maybe how they get there. Because I do think a lot.
What is
like
the
all of us are
off-ramp
trying
or
to
the
put ourselves in that mind.
Right? What's the off-ramp or the on-ramp? How do we have the conversation without destroying relationship and create relationship? right?
Yeah.
I say it as if I'm mad or irritated, and there's a huge part of that is I am mad and I am irritated and I am disappointed, and then I'm frustrated that I love these people who believe this stuff.
Yeah. Well,
because they also raised me, and I don't believe these things, and like